So in September of 2001, I was just promoted to the head of the West Coast for tax for Arthur Andersen. I moved my family down to San Francisco in August of 2001. In November of 2001 is when we first heard about Enron, that there might be some problems and this and that. And then in January of 2002 is when we found out that Andersen was more involved with Enron than we thought it was. That's when things started to really unravel and unravel very quickly. Most people at some point knew we were going to, the company was going to go under. Their entire careers were there. For a lot of us, our retirement accounts were there and everything else. They knew they were going to lose everything. Arthur Andersen had 82,000 employees, which is way more than Enron had. There were only about 30 employees involved with it at Arthur Andersen, but those 30 people's actions were going to lose the jobs of 82,000 people. And so there was, not only was it going to be bad, but there was this fairness issue about it that it just didn't seem fair. We had 82,000 employees. We had about 4,000 partners. They asked 12 partners worldwide to be involved with trying to come up with a solution. I was one of the 12 that they asked to do that. So after about 3 or 4 weeks of those meetings, it was very clear to me that we weren't going to survive. A lot of people were much more interested in protecting their own career and their own assets. So that's when I got together with a partner of mine in Seattle. I, at that point, had 750 people reporting to me, and I said, Bob, his name is Bob Carlisle, the company's going to go down. We need to do what we can to protect these people. So then we came up with a plan to take our 750 people in 7 different cities and go to the other 4 big firms and see if we could basically sell that group of people and our clients to one of the other firms. In March, late March, we were into this process about 6 weeks, and we still weren't sure whether we were going to place everybody, but we were working diligently to get that done. My largest client called me and said, we're going to replace our CEO, and Bob, we'd love to talk to you. In fact, we'd like you to be our CEO, but we want you to come talk to us. And I said, you know what, that is great. And even if I wasn't in this situation, I'd be very interested in that. But because I am in this situation, I can't do that. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, I've got 750 people's lives that are depending on me that I'm trying to find jobs for. And if I leave right now, this will collapse. And they'll just scatter to the wind. Now, they're smart people and they'll get jobs, but it will take them months and years to do that. And I just can't leave them. He says, well, Bob, I'm giving you an opportunity to be the CEO of this big company. And I said, I understand. I said, I'll tell you what, just to be fair to you, I'll go home, I'm going to pray about it, and I'm going to talk to my wife about it, but I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is. And I went home and talked to Ruth, and she's like, absolutely, you need to stay with your people. And so I came back to him, and we agreed, and we prayed about it. And the next day I came, and I said, I just can't do it. I'm sorry, but I need to make sure that my people get jobs. It was in the Wall Street Journal, an article on that we were the first ones to spin out of Arthur Andersen, and we took all 7 out of my 750 people. I got 740 of them jobs. Every one of them had a no-cut contract for a year. Given how bad it was, it couldn't have turned out any better for the people. So they all had places. They all got the same salary. There was no salary cuts or anything. So my client calls me a couple of days later and says, oh, I saw the deal. Looks like you cut a really good deal for everybody. I said, well, the best we could given what was happening. And he said, would you still like to talk to us? I said, well, Bill, I thought by now you would have already had some candidates because you've been looking for 6 to 8 weeks with a national search firm. He said, well, actually, I went back to my board and I told them anybody who's willing to turn down the job that they really want because they want to look out for 750 other people, that's the guy we want working for them. And my response was, well, that's great. I would like to talk to you. It would have been nice to tell me that 8 weeks ago. Because I got to tell you, honestly, there were plenty of times over that 8 weeks where I second-guessed myself. Should I have taken the job? Should I protect my family and this and that? I didn't. I never called him back. But then right after that, he and I met. I met with his board. I actually got a chance to witness during that because one of the questions they had was, how can you be the CEO of a company if you're a Christian? And I got to answer that question very boldly. And apparently enough that they hired me because in June I'll have my 10-year anniversary working for that company. If you treat people the way Christ, to the best of your ability, the way Christ did, that is a most godly attribute I can think of in the workplace because most bosses don't do that. Most bosses, they even if they're good people, they get stressed out, they get bottom line, they get pressure points, and then they start acting differently. And for me, every time I felt pressure, and I've been in jobs where I've averaged 60 hours a week for a long time, high pressure jobs, every time I feel the pressure, I go to instant prayer in my mind, just very quiet prayer, just quick prayer, but to say, Lord, just help me to be calm, help me be the leader that you want me to be, and then you can stop And the true leadership for me is looking at the experience from the other person, for the people who are working for me, looking at it from their perspective first, helping them to understand it, and then explaining to them why we need to do what we need to do. And by doing that, rather than just looking at it from my perspective or the company's perspective, then it creates a loyalty and a bond that's almost unbreakable. It was very important to me that Ruth and the kids knew that it was going to be a tough time, that I could tell them ahead of time so we could prepare for it. So Ruth and I talked about it, and we called a family meeting, and we all sat down and talked about it. I said, you guys, look, I don't know what this is going to require, but this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life, career-wise. And I want you guys to know a couple of things. One is that I'm not going to see a lot of you until this is fixed, but I love you guys, and I'll be here as often as I can. But even more importantly is that Mom and I believe that God brought us down here for a reason. We've prayed about this, and that we believe that reason is in this storm, that we need to be the light for a lot of other people, because the light doesn't show in the daylight, it only shows in the storm. And I want you guys to know that that's what we're trying to do, because it's one of those opportunities where you can see while we're going through it, are Mom and I living up to the Christian values that we've tried to teach you your whole life, or are we succumbing to the secular world and all the other things that come with that? And so we want you guys to look at us, test us as we go through this, and then when we get done, we'll have another meeting to talk about, did we really do what we said, or are we being hypocritical about our faith? At first, I was confused on why God had me go down there. Why would I go down there with my family and everything? But pretty quickly, it became clear through prayer that this was the reason God had me there, was to be able to impact people's lives during this type of storm. And so what happened was I was very calm during the day. I worked about 110 hours a week for 10 straight weeks during this time. So I was physically, emotionally, everything pretty well drained. But at work, I tried to be the rock, just as, Peter was the rock, and Jesus talks about that. And so it became very clear throughout my day that Jesus was more and more the foundation of my life. And the more I could cling to that, the more I could focus on it, everything else would be okay. One day in February, a partner walked into my office, and they'd only known me about 5 months because I came there in September. And they said, Bob, every partner is losing it. They know they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their capital account, they're going to lose their retirement. And you seem to be upbeat, you seem to be optimistic, you seem to be keeping things together. Why is that? And immediately, the Holy Spirit said to me, you need to tell them about Christ. But what really came out of my mouth was, don't worry about it. We're a great firm. We're going to weather this thing. And as long as we stick together, we're going to be okay. It was a 5-minute conversation. They felt better and they left. I didn't feel better. I almost instantly just felt kind of sick to my stomach. God didn't speak audibly to me, but it was about the next best thing to it. It was very clear. But when you're in leadership, particularly in the secular world, it's very hard to draw that line of when are you pushing someone into Christianity and when are you luring somebody into Christianity. And my view is you should be luring them in because it's such an attractive thing. And by the way you live your life, by the way you talk, you should be luring people in, not pushing them in. And when they asked that question, I guess I just wasn't prepared for it, and I did a poor job of it. I never, ever leave early, and about 2 hours later, I just couldn't focus on my work. I was so disappointed in myself in how I had answered that, and disappointed in myself on how I reacted to what God wanted me to do. I was just distraught on what I had done, and so I got home, and Ruth like, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not, and I told her what had happened. On that whole train ride home and that night, what I prayed about was, I said, Lord, please give me another chance. I know I screwed up. I know what you're calling me to do here, and I didn't do it, and I'm sorry for that. And I can't even, Lord, tell you honestly that I will do it right the next time. So if you give me another opportunity, please give me the strength and the courage to follow through. 2 days later, same exact time, right after lunch, about 1:30 in the afternoon, a partner knocks on my door, a different partner, says, Bob, you're different than everybody else. You're more optimistic. You're this. It was literally like the Groundhog's Day. It was like the same thing exactly right over again. I said a 3-second silent prayer to God, and I just said, thank you for the opportunity. Give me the courage. And I said, do you really want to know? And the partner said, well, of course. I wouldn't be in here if I didn't want to know. And I said, well, the difference for me is everything in my life, the foundation of my life is based on Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I said, that's what keeps me going. And if I take everything down to the core, that's what's important to me. Well, that partner came in, he closed the door, we talked for 45 minutes. He and his family, he'd never taken his family to church. He hadn't been to church since college, and he was in his 40s. That Sunday, he and his family came to church with us, and I said, okay, God, I get it. I get exactly what you're calling me to do. Now I need to step up and do it. And from that point forward, I was way more bold in my faith, and I have all kinds of cool stories of things that happened after that.